BEVs and luxury cars go hand in hand because at the end of the day, what you want in a luxury car is quiet, is silence, and electric cars do offer you that. Mercedes-Benz has got really serious with their EVs off late, and they've just launched this. This is the EQS SUV. It's their flagship electric car, and they're not just launched it, they're actually assembling it in India. Now, I know it looks a lot like the EQE SUV, which we're actually running as a long-termer, but there's a fair bit that's different, and we're going to talk you through all of that. We're going to talk you about styling, about luxury on the inside, about the driving experience, ride, handling.
But most importantly, we're going to be talking about the back seat. So today, I'm going to take the back seat while Atish does all the driving.
So welcome to Evo India. Welcome to our review of the EQS SUV. And before we get to anything else, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Evo India channel, and leave a comment down below. Do you like what the EQS SUV looks like? Let's start by talking about styling, and the EQS SUV does look very similar to the EQE, but there are a few small differences. The headlights have this triple DRL element in it, which the EQE doesn't get. You also get digital lights as standard on the EQS. The face, it's the typical EQ face with the blacked out grille and the three-pointed star on it, along with the light bar up top. Something that's really cool looking is the AMG style bumpers. These are really aggressive bumpers. They're not functional, obviously, there's no vents here, but they do look very cool. In profile, you will notice real differences from the EQE. For starters, it is a lot longer, 271 mm longer, and the wheelbase itself is longer as well. It's running 21-inch wheels as standard AMG style alloys. You've got flush door handles, and you'll notice the rear overhangs are slightly longer because you've got to fit that third row plus boot space in there. At the rear, it's not too different from the EQE, to be honest. The taillights are very similar. You do get the EQS 580 badge over there, which is a clear differentiator. And down below, you get an AMG style bumper. Apart from the design though, it is the size of this car that really stands out. It is bigger than a BMW iX. It is bigger than an Audi Q8 e-tron. It is almost the size of a Mercedes-Benz GLS. And that should really put into perspective how big this car is. But is it big on the inside as well? Let's head in there and check it out. When you step inside the EQS SUV, that's when you really get a sense of the luxury that it has to offer. The dashboard, it's very similar to the EQE because you have the hyperscreen that stretches from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of the dashboard. It's comprised of a single glass panel that houses 3 individual screens. One for your instrument cluster, this massive infotainment screen, and a separate passenger screen as well. Much like the EQE, you've got a high-set central tunnel. It's got open pore wood finish on the top. You've got a deep cavernous storage in here. This is really deep. And because this is a skateboard platform and you don't have a transmission tunnel, there's storage down here as well, a large tray underneath this tunnel. On the features front, it is obviously well kitted out. You've got nice comfortable seats, heating, cooling, memory, seat massagers. So this is a really comfortable place to be. You've got a panoramic sunroof, which is effectively a split sunroof. You've got 3D Burmester audio with 17 speakers. The only thing that is different from the EQE is you don't get 4-zone climate control. And that's because you get 5-zone climate control because you have a third row over there in the back. Okay, so what's the EQE like to drive? First, let's get the numbers out of the way because the numbers are pretty big. Power, 536 bhp. This is a lot more than what the EQE makes. The EQE makes some 402 bhp. Torque, 848. That is identical to the EQE. And all of that means this thing is really quick. It is a big, heavy car. It's 3 tons almost. But despite that, it is quick. There's an effortlessness to the way it picks up speed. It just feels very, very long-legged, you know. It feels like it just has acres and acres of power in reserve and it's never gonna run out of steam. Even at 80, 90 kilometers an hour, you know, you ease into the throttle and it just flies. 0 to 100 comes up in a pretty quick 4.7 seconds. 4.7 seconds is fast 15, 20 years ago, that was supercar territory. Today, a big, fat, luxury electric behemoth does a 4.7 second 0 to 100. So you're getting proper, legit performance. But as with all these EVs, it's the refinement and the quietness with which it goes about its business that really makes the difference. You know, if you were sitting in a GLS, even if it is a GLS, you've got an engine somewhere around you, vibrating, grumbling, making a little bit of noise. But in an EV, it's quiet, it's dead silent, and that dead silent is what just elevates the luxury, the feeling of luxury to another level. There's zero vibrations, there's zero noise, just effortless power and incredible refinement. Okay, we haven't spoken about the battery yet. The battery is, again, like this car, big. That's 30% more than what the EQE gets. The EQE's battery is some 90 something kilowatt hours, 122 kilowatt hours. That's crazy. In terms of range, Mercedes-Benz does claim some ridiculous 800 something kilometers, but that's on the MIDC ARAI test cycle, and you're never going to be able to get realistic range in that ballpark. Realistically, I think this car can do a 600 kilometer range easily. We got the car at around 80% battery. It said 500 kilometers of range on it. So range should be good. But again, range is a factor of many things, including your driving style, your driving habits, the driving conditions, whether it's city, whether it's highway, your regen settings. There's just too many permutations and combinations. But we don't have the car today for long enough to come to any sort of conclusion about range. So yeah, range is going to be generous. You can take that as a given. In a luxury car, we also have to talk about ride quality, and ride quality is what we've come to expect of these big, large EV Mercedes-Benzes. On a good road, on a smooth road, it's phenomenally good. You know, it's stable, it's planted, it hugs the road. You feel like you're on a typical European long-legged machine. Just, you can go miles and miles without any sort of fatigue. It doesn't bounce around, it doesn't waft unnecessarily, it just stays planted and confident. And when the roads are great, you'll be really happy in the EQS SUV. However, there is a firm edge to the ride. This is running 21-inch wheels as standard. It weighs a lot, and because of that, the suspension also has to be tuned to deal with that sort of weight, and that sort of tuning does mean it is a little bit firm. So when you go over smaller bumps at low speeds, when you go over sharp bumps, when you drop a wheel into a pothole, there is a sharp edge to things. It does feel a little bit firm, and it doesn't feel like you're floating on clouds all of the time, because that firm edge, you can feel it in the cabin. It's very obvious. You do have to slow down a fair bit for bumps, and when you do hit them, you do feel them a little bit in the cabin. But again, this is not going to break your back firm. You know, it's just a firm edge, an underlying firmness that you feel when you hit a bump, or you go over a pothole, or you hit a little dip or crest in the road. But comfort is not just about ride quality. It is a major part of it. A lot of what comfort has to do is to do with the back seat. So let's pop over to Siddish and the back seat and see what he has to say.
So here we are in the back seat, and the first thing that I notice is the amount of space that you have. Now, I've been using an EQE as my long-termer for the past 3-4 months, so I know it pretty well. And the immediate reaction is that the EQS SUV has significantly more space at the rear. The front seat is adjusted to a comfortable seating position out there, and I got like some 6-7 inches of free knee room. The other thing is that normally in electric cars, because the battery is mounted in the floor is always high, and that means you lack under thigh support. But here in the EQS SUV, you do not lack under thigh support. The seats feel very normal, in fact, like a combustion engine vehicle. So it is comfortable. But I have to point out that the seats are pretty firm. For instance, an E-Class seats, those are more corseting, they are softer, but this is actually quite a firm seat. On the plus side though, you do get these soft cushions for the headrest, and you get another set of pillows, so if you want to go to bed, you can hold on to it and have a nice nap in the back. You also get these twin screens, which actually makes the third screen in the central armrest pretty redundant. So this, what I believe, no, a Samsung screen. So this Samsung tablet, which is mounted in the center armrest, it only mirrors what's there on the twin screens. So this is actually redundant, and you have all of your information. So your nav information, media information. You can in fact connect stuff via HDMI ports. So you get 2 HDMI ports for each of the screens. So whether it's a PlayStation or an Amazon Prime, you also get your headphones, Mercedes branded headphones, so you can listen to your own entertainment while you're being driven to work. And this of course is more focused on the back seat. The EQE is more of a driver's electric SUV, whereas the EQS SUV is more focused on backseat comforts, which again brings me to the other thing. It does not have sunshades for the windows. Now, some of the cars on this media test drive, they have aftermarket sunshades, but you don't get sunshades. You do get a big sunroof, and now it's mid-afternoon, so you don't want that open because then the sun is going to roast your head. And the control for the sunroof is up front, so the driver has to do it. The driver also has to adjust the passenger seat if you need it. So you don't have that boss mode business. You can control the recline angle of the rear seats. Now this is the max recline angle, and it is good. It's not overtly reclined, it's actually a good recline, but if you want like lots of recline, you're not going to get it. You can also slide the seats fore and aft for obviously to release more space in the third row. Now the EQS SUV, it only comes with a bench in the center. You don't get captain seats. Those captain seats, which Mercedes calls first class seating configuration, that's reserved for the Maybach. So you can't option it on the EQS SUV. And because the EQS SUV is assembled in India, there's only one spec. You can't add on things onto it. This is the spec. What you see is what you get, but you get a lot of stuff on it, including a wireless charger in the armrest on this center thing. Now you can push this at the back, and because of the flat floor, you can actually seat 3 people. It's not going to be very comfortable in the bench putting 3 people, but 3 people can fit in. It's not like it's an impossible task. That's because of that flat floor. And talking about equipment, the rear seats get heating, not cooling. It gets heating though. Probably too expensive to take it out for the India spec car, so they've left it there. No massagers also for the rear bench. Only the front seats get massagers. And can you fit full-size human beings in the third row? Let's find out. Well, not really. Atish is sitting comfortably, but not very comfortably. If he sits very comfortably, he can actually slide the seat further back, and that reduces the space even more. So the third row is good for kids, or you can ask your middle row passenger to slide the seat in front. But even then, I'm 5'9" and I won't be able to fit in here.
Okay, now there's one more thing I want to talk to you about, and that is rear wheel steer. The EQS SUV gets rear wheel steering. We've seen it on a few cars before. We've seen it on the launch edition of the S-Class. We saw it on the EQS sedan. We saw it even on the Maybach, the GLS Maybach. And what rear wheel steer effectively does is it can virtually shorten the wheelbase of a car. So at low speeds, the car, say you turn right, the rear wheels turn left in the opposite direction to which you're turning, and that tightens your turning radius. It makes the car virtually more compact, and what that gives you is a better turning radius. This thing actually has a very tight turning radius for such a large car. I believe it's somewhere around the turning radius of an A-Class, which for a 5+ meter long car is really something. And then it also makes maneuverability and handling a little better. So like I said, at lower speeds, it virtually shortens the wheelbase and just makes everything feel a lot tighter. So when you're maneuvering around town, when you're handling at low speeds, when you're taking hairpin bends, it just makes the car feel a lot smaller. It makes it shrink around you. But what it also does at higher speeds is it turns the wheels in the same direction as your front wheels. That effectively lengthens your wheelbase and it adds to a sense of stability. So say you're doing 120, 130 kilometers an hour and you're on the freeway or the highway and you want to change lanes, the sense of stability that you get sweeping from one lane to the other is phenomenal, and that's because of the rear wheel steer. So the EQS, it actually handles and feels a lot more maneuverable and nimble than the EQE, which is a smaller car. And the sole reason for that is the rear wheel steer. It's a brilliant technology that fundamentally changes the characteristic of a car. We've been driving it in and around town, so I can't talk about on the limit handling and how this handles the corners. But from going up and about a few of the bends that I have found, it does give you a very good first impression of nimbleness and of good handling. Another thing that the air suspension can do if you need it is raise the suspension. So the off-road mode, it can be activated under 70 kilometers an hour, and at those speeds what happens is you can raise the ride height of the EQS a little bit. If you remember back when the EQC SUV launched, the ride height was really low. It had the batteries in the floor, it rode really low, and it did not have air suspension. So every speed breaker you hit, you had to either grab it like a supercar or just wince every time the bottom scraped. And that was really not very nice. But here, air suspension, you get into the drive modes, you put it into the off-road drive setting, and it will actually raise the suspension. There are other drive modes as well, Eco to obviously maximize range, Comfort, which puts it in its most balanced setting in terms of both drivetrain and suspension, and then there's a Sport mode which tightens things up. It makes your throttle responses a little quicker, and it obviously firms up the suspension a little bit more. But this is a car you want to drive in Comfort mode for the most part, and that's where it's its happiest, and that's where the guy in the back seat is going to be the happiest. So what do we make of the EQS SUV? In terms of overall spec, it has a lot going for it. It's got the performance, it's got the range, it's got the luxury on the inside, it's got the space on the inside, and it's got something that none of the other cars in the segment have, which is 3 rows of seats. But I think the clincher is the price. Because this is assembled in India, it can be priced at rupees 1.41 crores, which is just a little bit more than what the EQE is priced at. The EQE now has a lot of deals on it, a lot of discounts to make it a little more attractive, but that makes the EQS SUV actually, in the context of its segment, look like great value for money. Overall, it is a very well-rounded car. It has a lot going for it, and if you are looking for a full-size electric car, this should be at the top of your list.